Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm living in Cardiff, and in September I'm going to be studying medicine. I grew up in North Wales with the mountains and the beaches. It's a really beautiful place. I love my church family, I loved the worship, I loved prayer. I'd grown up in this little bubble of faith and of quite a naive, simple view of the world. I came from quite an affluent, not very diverse area of the world, and I hadn't seen a lot of it. So that started to bring up a lot of questions, particularly when I was 14 and I had the privilege of going to Uganda for a couple of weeks. But coming back, I could never really go back into my small world and the small box and the small view I had of the world. And I couldn't really reconcile coming from my background of relative affluence with what I'd seen of the rest of the world. I became disillusioned with church, and that turned itself into actually being disillusioned with God. I didn't understand where God kind of fitted into all of these questions. I'm expected to be like my parents and lead worship and do talks and to have things all together. And I'd heard the word backslider enough to be terrified of it. So I figured that if I started telling people, actually I've got doubts about faith, I don't know what I believe, I'm struggling with who God is, people would start having emergency prayer meetings and running around in whispered voices about me losing my faith. I went to this phase where I saw God far more as like a football team or my favourite pizza than being a kind of core foundation. Like it was nice to be a Christian, kind of like on the side. It's nice to do the whole church thing. It was nice to be able to pray when I needed it, but I didn't want it to be the core defining thing about my identity. And when you remove that as the solid base of it, you've suddenly got this massive hole. I became very insecure. I started looking to different things to be that, that core, that defining thing. And of course, my worlds were just felt increasingly polarized. Underneath it all was a real insecurity that I couldn't shift. So yeah, the catalyst really for my shift towards God was just this increasing feeling of, I can't do this. I can't pretend to be people that I'm not. I can't live up to this unnecessary pedestal I put my parents on and other people at church. And this desire within me just to be authentic and to be free to be myself without constantly seeking everyone's approval. But also, there are a few people that did listen, that noticed that there was something up. My youth leader challenged me that reading the Bible was more important than revision. And at the time I was like, what is this madness? You don't understand. But these little things kind of opened the door for me to start thinking about faith again and asking, okay, is this real? Is this something that I want to build my life on? And if it is, what does that mean? During that time, when I had all this academic pressure I put on myself and I was trying to be all these different people, I got to a point where I just said, God, you can have it back. I want you to be the centre of my life because I can't go on like this. And that was quite hard for me because I really valued my independence. I valued doing things my way. And in that moment, I think I encountered grace in a way that I hadn't understood it before. For whatever reason, I'd always had this view of trying to please God or trying to obey a list of rules, and I realised that it wasn't about that. The faith was about this relationship and connection with God. I felt so loved and so valued, despite the fact I knew that I was just struggling. I knew that I didn't have answers. I knew I'd done and said and thought things that I wasn't proud of, even if no one else knew it. I felt so much joy, and so much of those pressures seemed to fall away. And I was like, wow, the rest of my life is just going to be this amazing season of joy and learning stuff about the Bible and adventures with God, and it's going to be amazing, it's going to be wonderful, and this is it. And that didn't last. There was a lot of loss in those years. I came to terms with a lot of death and a lot of pain and a lot of grief. And I found myself back in a place of questions. And yet, within it all, I went through it with him. And that was different to before, when I'd very much been going through things on my own. And I found in God a place for struggle, a place for grief, a place for, just the real depth of our human emotion and questions. We're called to be involved ourselves in the reality of this world, and I believe he wants to use each of us in being part of that and to entering into the pain and struggle of this world with the good news, with the hope, with the joy and peace that we've experienced, that we know are durable, that we know aren't just tacky gift shop fridge magnet stuff. I like to think that faith is more something you'd find in B&Q than a tourist souvenir shop. So really, almost coming full circle back to the things that were important to me when I was much younger, I was learning more and more about where is God in the reality of the world. It's that same question that drew me away from faith now draws me on, because I believe that God is in our complete reality. There is freedom to ask difficult questions, there's freedom to voice these things, and prayer is very much about ranting at God sometimes, because he can take it.